Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have got a whopper of an episode today, and I am like over the moon geeking out over this one. But first, I must say hello to my partner, Jamie. How's it going today?
Going okay, going okay. Very interesting topic today.
Uh, yeah, we're both really excited. At Real Food Recovery, this is a podcast where we explore many facets of food recovery and find balance in our relationship with what we eat. So we're glad we're here today as we dive into this topic that's becoming more and more concerning. It's really just kind of been on my radar lately. I'm ashamed to say I really have not known about this for as long as the concern has been around, but that is how plastics are seeping into our food system and affecting our bodies. So, we are going to talk about something many of us may not have thought about, and that's just plastics in our food. And I'm not just talking about plastic wrappers or containers, I'm talking about microplastics and nanoplastics, these tiny, almost invisible particles that are ending up in our food and then, of course, eventually inside of our bodies. And so we're going to explore how these plastics get into our bodies and brains, which was very alarming. I can't afford any more of problems in the brain. And then the potential health risks that they pose, especially for those of us that are recovering from the effects of ultra processed food. And before we get into this any further, Jamie, do you have anything you want to say about this
No,
heavy topic?
it's an important topic. So let's start by talking about what microplastics and nanoplastics are. Microplastics are tiny plastic particles less than 5 millimeters in size, about the size of a sesame seed, if not smaller. Nanoplastics are even smaller, measuring less than 1 micrometer. While plastics are incredibly useful in modern packaging, they also break down into smaller particles over time. And these particles have made their way into our water systems, the air we breathe, and yes,
Yeah.
even our food.
Yeah, those are the three main areas how they get into our body, the air, the food, and water. So that's so scary because that's everything that we consume, right? That's everything that's around us.
Yes.
So the big question is, how do these plastics end up in our food? The primary way plastics make their way into our food is through packaging. Most processed and ultra processed foods come in plastic containers, wraps, or bottles. When
Mhm.
plastics are exposed to heat and light, or mechanical stress like being transported, stored, or this is what I'm guilty of, heating things in a microwave, they can release these microplastics and nanoplastics. And I heard about also the the inside lining of cans,
Oh,
also
yes.
coffee when you Starbucks coffee cups. I shouldn't have named them, but
Any paper or plastic
yeah.
has a lining that is plastic, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
including
microwave
paper.
popcorn. I didn't even think about microwave popcorn. And you can really spin out if you get all the way down into like your tube of toothpaste, your toothbrush, the handles, the bristles on the brush. But really, I mostly freaked out when I was becoming more and more aware of the trauma that comes from the microwave because I've been guilty of that. I mean, ever since we got a microwave when I was a kid, and my dad called us all into the kitchen and said, "Kids, we have a microwave." And from that point on, I mean, I was a teenager, so maybe almost 50 years. 45 years I've been heating things in the microwave. So how much has been lodged in my organs and brain since that? So what are
Mhm.
your thoughts as you're starting to learn about this?
Oh, I've known about this for a long time. And I've totally overhauled all of the food vessels and containers and the way that I buy food if I can, right? In some ways I can't avoid it. Um, so I've gone to glass probably about 5 years ago, in just about everything or stainless. And when I first got married, my husband, I would tell him, when we first got married and lived together a few years ago, even dating, I just said, we would pack each other food or take leftover food for lunch or something, and I would be like, you can't leave it in that plastic container from the restaurant. You can't leave that. No, 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 no. He's like, what do you mean? I said, put it in glass. And he's like, why? I said, because you're not going to heat that up in the microwave, are you? Like, it gets right into your food. He thought I was nuts. He thought I was insane. And, this is the man who, would eat standing over a sink and never shut cabinet doors if I didn't live here either. So, we were we were working with someone who was essentially a bachelor. And I just, explained to him that these particles, I mean, anything you see, if you like, one thing that solidified it for me years ago was when I'm Italian and we cook a lot with tomato sauce, and tomatoes are very acidic. And if anyone knows, if you put tomato sauce in a plastic container, especially your prized Tupperware container, it would immediately stain it. Well, it's a two-way
Yeah.
street. Not only does the tomato stain the plastic gets in the tomato sauce. So you are ingesting whatever that tomato reacted with, whatever that food reacts with.
Mhm.
So I laughed when they came out with BPA free. Um, I would rather go thirsty than drink out of those little chintzy plastic water bottles that make the crinkly noise, because that's just like death in a bottle to me. Like I've been very aware of this stuff for a while, and slowly alarmed by, yes, I can avoid ingesting it as often as possible. Probably 85% of it I do. But there are some things that I can't avoid.
Right.
And certainly in the air and in the water. And now I don't drink municipal water. That's another way that I avoid it. But the water that I buy is professionally filtered in a giant plastic vat. So, you can only do what you can do.
I know. I know.
So,
Can I ask you,
yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, but you said that first of all, you're ahead of the game, as always, ahead of me, 5 years. I mean, I'm really just now figuring this out. But you said you switched all your containers over, and which I had told you that I'm trying to do that as well. But I thought, I've got all this beautiful Tupperware. What do I do? My first thought, well, I'll give it to somebody. And then I'm like, wait, why would I give it to somebody to have them put it? And then I thought, well, I'll throw it away. Well, then I throw it away, and then it gets
The
in the
landfill.
waste system.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So I'm
I
like,
made the
do you?
decision to just do the best I can for my body and for my family, and leave the rest up to God. Like I'm not going around, forcing people to eat out of Tupperware, and I'm not going around trying to, you know, clog landfills. But at some point, I have to prioritize.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out, what do I do with, I mean, I feel bad because that's an investment too, all my
Mhm.
Tupperware
And
stuff. But
remember when Tupperware came out, God, maybe 10 years ago, they came out, I think it was Rubbermaid with a BPA free and the stainless Tupperware, the Tupperware that couldn't stain. It was a special kind of plastic, and everyone's like, ooh, and they upgraded the Tupperware. And I was like, I remember thinking, nope, glasses is the way to go. And
yeah,
anyway, so we'll talk more about replacements here, but another
yes.
way that we get the plastics is through the, contamination in our supply chain. So, water,
Mhm.
soil, all of this has been treated with fertilizers that are stored in plastic, and fertilizers are highly caustic and toxic and reactionary, and they're literally sitting in plastic. There are some fertilizers and liquid and grain fertilizers that are um, so caustic that they have to be stored in a special kind of plastic because they will erode thinner plastics. What does
So
that
we're
tell
gonna
you?
eat that.
What does that tell you? It's literally sucking in whatever it's being stored in. So
Mhm.
again, when we think about that soil, right? And even the machinery that processes our food. So one more reason to not eat processed foods
Yeah.
can contribute to the plastic particles that end up in what we eat. There are alternatives here. There are some that are BPA free. Back when I was a vegan, I ate a lot of beans, of course, not that much, but enough. And I would try to buy the beans in the bags, right? Or cook them, or cook them myself from, if they were raw, like they were in a bag, right? Hard, they were in a bag, and I would
Yeah.
soak them and cook them, and that's the best I could do. I try to stay away from the canned beans. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. To even tofu. Tofu is packaged in plastic.
That's
The meat,
everything.
the meat that I buy from my farmer is vacuum sealed in plastic. So you can
I,
only do your best.
yeah. That makes me think about, I was at church a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden I was smelling this sweet fruity smell, which is odd in the middle of a service. And I'm like, that's not right. So I'm looking around, and I see this little girl in front of me, and she had opened one of those, these fruit snacks come in the little
Two
individual size. So she's opened that up and whipping out
kinds of
all that.
plastics. Did you leap over the pew and grab it from her?
I literally wanted to smack it out of her hand and make those fruit snacks go flying in every different direction. I didn't. I restrained myself. But can you imagine? So I'm thinking, I'm staring at that going, you are consuming this gel-like
Which
ultra
is
processed
plastic, right?
frankenfood
It's plastic.
filled with dyes
Hmm.
and then shrink wrapped into those
Under
plastic
the
containers.
under the guise of health.
Yeah.
Under the guise
I
of health.
right.
10% fruit juice is healthy.
Right.
Yeah. Those are
Right.
10%. Mommy thought she was doing something healthy for her
I
little one.
know, I know. It's hard to watch. It is. I'm not being snooty, but that is very
No,
hard to
no.
watch. And
It's
I'm just thinking about, girl, you are literally killing yourself. But again, there's only so much we can do. And that was just about the time that I was really starting to delve deeper and deeper into that. So I think it affected me on a higher level. But yeah,
sure.
these Frankenfoods are all wrapped in plastic. And it's not just the packaged goods that are affected. I would like to think it is, but foods we consider natural or minimally processed, like my fruits, my vegetables, and fish, can also contain these particles. And Jamie, I don't know about your grocery store, but when I go shopping, most of mine is done in the produce section. But guess what? I'm putting all my fruits and vegetables, and I am filling them with those plastic bags that are provided for me. And not to mention, my berries come in plastic containers, my pre-bagged carrots, lettuce, baby spinach leaves, everything comes in plastic bags. Do you have the little rolls of plastic bags at your grocery store too? Is that what they provide for you to get your fruits and vegetables in?
Yes. Yes. Yep. That's everywhere. And
Mhm.
I used to use, cloth ones, and I've seen others use cloth ones. You know, again, it's you got to kind of pick and choose your battles. The way I look at it is if the food is being, procured from the store in plastic, it's temporary, right? That's why I would get it home and get it out of the plastic and put it in glass.
Mhm.
As soon as I got home, uh, again, you do the best you can. You can't control the whole food supply. I don't have a garden in my backyard, and I don't have, a cow that I slaughter. So I need to, as graphic as that is, I need to rely on the food supply,
Where do
unfortunately.
you said you have gotten cloth bags before?
I've seen some people have cloth
Okay.
bags, and
I,
years ago I had them, but again, that's when
I
at the
need,
beginning of my vegan journey, and I had to get rid of them right around COVID because everyone's like, you can't reuse something, it might have COVID on it. So I got rid of those back then. Yeah. Even and by PS, all of the masks that they made us wear,
right.
all
Exactly.
plastic particles in those masks that we were literally breathing in for a solid year or two, depending on your state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we think about plastic particles have been found in tap water, bottled water, table salt, and even marine marine life, like fish and jellyfish, of course, right? Better recycling systems and improved waste management are key to preventing plastic waste from entering natural ecosystems. I don't know how true that is. I'd like to believe that's true. I don't know how true that is with the recycling, right? There's a lot of light coming up about recycling processes not being as pristine as they were sold to be. Um, but advocates suggest stricter regulations and more effective recycling programs, particularly in regions where waste disposal systems are underdeveloped. Again, I mean, we are killing the health of this planet in lots of ways, and a lot of it's people that are aware it's still unavoidable, right? Like I said earlier, like I know that there's the downstream effects of some of the choices I have to make to preserve my health, but at some point I don't know what else to do. I can't go out in the backyard and burn it, right? I can't, and then what do? You have to just dispose of it
Yeah.
responsibly, but you have to dispose of it.
Mhm. You had mentioned talking about fish and being careful about the fish you eat. And so I looked that up to get a little more information on, okay, what fish are we supposed to eat and what aren't we? It listed basically all of them. By the time I got done with that list, it literally was everything that I was eating or would ever eat. And then I started laughing because it said, well, and then the big fish eat the little fish. So the little, even if the big fish didn't eat it, if the little fish did, then you're consuming it because like sardines were at the top of the list. And
Right.
so I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this will make you laugh even more. When I was looking at my can of tuna, it did say, I'm looking at all my cans now to make sure it says non-BPA. So yeah, the can may have no plastic in it, but the fish inside probably does.
Yes. Yes. Yep. There are some brands of tuna, for instance, that you can buy that, Safe Catch is one brand that does,
Yeah,
very, very low mercury. And
right.
again, that would be one toxin to avoid,
Yeah,
but there's a whole bunch of others. And then when I kind of giggle whenever I see BPA free on a can, because I'm like, okay, it's not BPA. What are they using to line that can? They're using something,
yeah.
I'm guessing, that's equally toxic. So it's just not BPA. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like no BPA, but it's really something just like BPA. We're just not going to call it BPA because they have to, it's the
Mm-hmm.
same process, right? They have to, you know, so they say keep aluminum from getting into the food, which is a good thing, right? A good thing. And keep the food from spoiling, a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do they do that, right? Maybe it's truly a lesser of two evils from their perspective too.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
fault,
sure.
I don't think anyone's, truly try. I think they're just the interest was in keeping the public safe, and
As,
this is what we're dealing with.
yeah, unless we move to a farm and grow all of our own food.
Exactly, exactly. And create all of our own food from, the whole food system, right? And I don't know how there are people that do that. There are many, but
Yeah,
they are few and far between.
yeah. So this is where things get even more concerning because recent studies show that microplastics and nanoplastics can be absorbed into our tissues. They have been found in our blood, and some evidence suggests that they can cross the blood-brain barrier, potentially affecting brain function. Not only are plastics showing up in our brain, they are lodging in the plaque in our arteries, which that makes sense to me because that's something that could easily get hooked on if plastics are passing through, they could easily lodge into that, as well
Mhm.
as showing up in the placenta of pregnant women. That really, really bothered me. And I would be curious. I didn't really look into this more. I should have spent more time on understanding if the fetus is affected in any way. I don't actually know the information on that. I don't know. Do you know anything
Yeah,
about
for
that?
sure. For sure they're affected. Everything mom eats, the baby
I would
eats.
think so too.
Yeah.
I would think so too.
Yeah, disturbing. And again, for those of us recovering from, the effects of ultra processed foods, this is alarming, right? Because our bodies are already working hard to detox from the ingredients in these plastic laden foods. Uh, and if you think about the chemicals that are not natural, that are in these foods, the dyes and the additives and preservatives. So you add plastics to the mix, and that's really further burdening our immune system,
Yeah.
digestive system, and even its function. I was listening today to an interview with a woman who, has, for her, it was diabetes recovery, and she did a great job talking about her type 2 diabetes reversal and with diet, and lifestyle. And she and her husband both, and it was a really interesting talk. And they have little children. I think she said her kids were 8 and 10, and her little girl or boy will ask them, like, at birthday parties or a holiday event,
Hmm.
they'll allow their children to have a small serving of a dessert, and the mom and dad abstain. And the little kids will say, mommy, why can't you have this? And she said, oh, I had it for years, sweetheart. I ate so much of it that my body just does not process it right anymore. I can't have it anymore. And that was how she explained it. That's truly how she believes, for her and her husband, and whose their health complications were very, very high from all of the different things they had to deal with, the complications of type 2, and they were very young, like in their early 30s. It was very, very sad. So she talks about, at some point there is a load that our bodies, and everyone's different, everyone's load is different, everyone's body is different, but at some point the load, that the scale is tipped, so to speak, or the load is tipped over from safe to cannot clean itself, cannot take care or protect itself anymore. And, you know, for her, she feels like her load was tipped in her 30s and she can't go back.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true if you think about it with uh, our immune systems and our digestive systems once we're exposed to these foods and the plastics in the foods. At some point, your system, at some age, your system may not be able to recover.
Yeah.
And you'll have to just, you know, and that's where I know I am in my late 40s, right? Where you know, my system has gotten to the point where I don't have the option of being flexible anymore. I don't have the option of trying
Well
to
said.
trying to keep things like plastics around because they just make me very sick.
Yeah. Yeah, that's as I age too. So I'm 61 now. I find that all my systems are much more delicate,
Mhm.
everything. And so that is a great point about it's just not an option to
No.
compromise on what we do anymore if we want
Yes.
to be happy and healthy. No, great point. We know that plastics contain chemicals like BPA and phthalates, which the problem is these are endocrine disruptors, and these chemicals can interfere with hormone regulation, potentially increasing the risk of obesity, diabetes, reproductive issues, and that's both in men and women, by the way, and even certain cancers such as breast and prostate. Some research also suggests that these plastics could contribute to inflammation in the brain, which has been linked to conditions like anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline.
Yeah, it's worth talking a little bit more about endocrine disruptors. To be clear, they are chemicals that interfere with the body's endocrine system, the network of glands and hormones that regulate essential functions such as growth and increased risk to developmental issues in children, including learning disabilities and cognitive impairments. Also, metabolism and its associations with obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and even reproduction in both sexes can be
Yeah,
affected, right? So
yeah,
these disruptors can mimic, block, and alter the normal activity of hormones. So if anything your hormones are related to, these chemicals can really mess them up and certainly affect your thyroid hormone, right? Your thyroid is the master endocrine gland.
Mhm.
So it's not just, you know, oh my estrogen or testosterone, it's literally regulated by
Yeah.
your thyroid and your hypothalamus.
Mhm. It's scary. It's scary how far-reaching these plastics can be, and we just don't have enough information to know the far-reaching effects yet. But, in simple terms, the endocrine system operates on precise hormonal balances. Any type of imbalance can really throw your whole body off. So they can just small disruptions can lead to significant health effects, especially during critical, if you think about this, during critical periods of development, like fetal growth and puberty, like we were talking about. The pervasive presence of these chemicals in everyday products makes exposure common and raises the concern about the cumulative impact on our health. And the last thing we want is our children being exposed before birth and then from there just continuing on for a lifetime. I mean, it's terrifying.
Yeah. So what do we do about this? Well, we can minimize the impact of microplastics and nanoplastics on our health, but we see them everywhere. We feel it everywhere. So, think about practically, we need to reduce our plastic use, and this is something that
Mhm.
you just can choose to become aware of, and choose alternatives to plastics and packaging. And if you can't, as soon as you get them home, put them into glass, right? And again, it's not going to eliminate exposure, but it's going to help at least reduce it on, control what you can control. When I learned about this years ago, I took $200 out of my savings account and I went to Walmart and I bought the best, for my money, the best
Mhm.
glassware that I could find. And unfortunately, all of that glassware has um plastic lids, but I choose my battles, right?
Mhm.
So I bought, they were like, Pyrex, cheap Pyrex containers, glass containers of different sizes and color coded lids. And I just bought, I think, 3 packages of them and then I bought glass ball jars, right? Old fashioned
Mhm.
canning jars with
Mhm.
I swapped out the lids that are lined with plastic
Yeah.
for metal. And again, you choose your poison. And I did my best with that. And I took that $200 bought me 3 of those Pyrex sets and 2 of those boxes of ball jars. one for each size. And I just did my best with that. It's shocking that $200 doesn't go that far, but that's what I did. And I don't regret a dime of it. I still have those containers. I use them every day.
Yeah.
And it's just critical.
We should re-put that picture of your refrigerator up, um, showing how you store your foods because it's a piece of artwork, the way
Oh,
you
back
do
then it
that.
was. I had a lot more plants in my life back then. So yeah, there were there was a lot to look at back then. Not so much in in the fridge these days.
So you also made a good point about going to Walmart, and you don't have to buy the top of the line
No,
glass container, so you can make your money go a little bit further too.
absolutely. I bought these
So
least expensive that were sturdy, and I felt like, I
it's
wouldn't
good
crack
enough.
if I looked at wrong. So
Another thing, this is big, and that is avoid heating foods in plastic. I have gotten 1,000% better on that, but never, never, never microwave food in plastic containers. When it's heated, that's when it really amps up the releasing of all the chemicals and the microplastic particles. So
mhm,
transfer food to a microwave safe glass or ceramic dish before reheating. And yeah, learning about all this has really scared me straight when it comes to microwaving. And I'm not perfect with my Tupperware in the refrigerator. I'm working on switching some of that out. I've stored some things in the refrigerator, but little by little, I'll start. It's going to be a process for
mhm.
me, but I've done a good chunk on it. It like Jamie said, it's hard to be absolutely perfect in everything, but
Yeah, I would say it's impossible, but you can get better. Um, Filtering your water is the next one. Microplastics are found in tap water and every single bottle of water, every single I shudder when I see people walking around with cases of water in their carts because it's literally just microplastic laden
yeah,
water that honestly, if you think about drinking and sodas or seltzers in plastic or cans, any can of soda or seltzer, all of those are lined with plastic. So if you think about carbonation, carbonation is what? Acidic,
yeah.
literally interacts with what's inside it. And I
Mhm.
grew up for years drinking from cans. For years. I know there's many people in the health influencer space that are stuck on flavored seltzers, and that's like gotten them away from diet sodas. Amazing, good, better, best, right? But they're still drinking out of the plastic. And the water, if we think about, what that means, right? The water literally sits in the plastic. It gets heated up. If you leave a plastic water bottle in the sun in your car, who doesn't? All of that gets heated up. I remember noticing, God, probably 10 years ago, I noticed I left a water bottle in my car and it was hot and I took a drink because I was so thirsty and didn't think. And I remember thinking, this tastes different than when I left it in the car in the first place. And
Like
it, and
plastic?
oh, absolutely. So again, now my husband and I joke whenever anyone hands me a water bottle a plastic water bottle, just to be, nice, or he laughs, he giggles. He's like, oh, she's not going to drink that. Come on. Like sometimes he'll fake slap it out of someone's hand. Like, don't give
Uh-huh.
that. But he jokes, but it's true. Like he knows I just won't touch the stuff.
Yeah.
And when I got sick last year, I mean, it was like, I was even more strict about it because I knew that my thyroid had crashed and I knew that my hypothalamus was affected, and I was working with my organs were not able to receive signal from the thyroid anymore. And I am like, I am not going to put one more thing in this body if I don't, that I can help anyway.
Right.
Again,
Right.
you can't be perfect. You cannot be perfect. I cannot, source all of my own food in my backyard or on my farm. I wish I could, but I can't. So I do what I can.
Mhm.
And yes, I drink out of everything. Glass. There are some glass lined metal drinking containers. There are
Hmm.
some, glass canteens and other things that are hard outside with a metal outside, stainless outside, and a glass lined inside. I've heard good things. They're very expensive.
Mhm.
I think this whole bottle cost me $2 and something at the store, and I just refill it
Oh,
150,000 times, and I, I wash it and I, spray it with vinegar inside and clean it out every couple of days, and it's been just fine.
yeah. There's a way. If there's a will, there's a way to make
Yes.
improvements.
Yes.
The next one is eat fresh whole foods, and the more whole, unprocessed foods you consume, the less plastic exposure you'll have. That's just the bottom line on that. And this is especially important for those of us recovering from the effects of processed foods and buying fresh produce, grains, and proteins in bulk and reusing cloth bags like Jamie had talked about or glass jars can reduce that plastic consumption. So yeah, just making changes wherever you can.
Yeah, I want to just say one other thing on the water too. There's a lot of, at least in Texas, there's a lot of water places that are popping up, like, in strip malls, these water stores, and they have
Oh,
these huge reverse osmosis
oh.
filtration systems. And they are very popular down here because people are pretty aware of all of the issues. And
Mm-hmm.
Houston is a very toxic town filled with chemical plants and, oil refineries.
Oh.
So it's a very toxic town. So people try to do what they can. There, so
Mhm.
you go in, you get your reverse osmosis alkaline water, and you can get it hydrogenated if you're drinking it right then. Otherwise, you just people bring in the big, tall plastic water, 5-gallon water jugs,
Mm-hmm.
and they fill them at the huge big sink, right? That has all the faucets from the
Mm-hmm.
osmosis system. And I went out even and I found 5-gallon, they're for wine, but I found 5-gallon glass jugs because I was like, I'm not going to pay a
Right.
lot of money for my fancy water and put it in plastic. So I
Right.
went out and I got the glass jugs. They're about 60 pounds when they're filled with
That
water,
I was getting ready to ask about that.
really
So you
heavy.
get a workout in and
Oh, I make my husband go usually
Mhm.
and have him help me. And when I have to go by myself, I I wear my non-skid oven mitts. So when I pick them up, I don't drop them.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if you would drop that?
Oh,
Oof.
yeah. Anyway, so here's the thing, where there's a will, there's a way. And wouldn't you know that water tastes 1,000 times better coming out of that
Yeah,
glass
I
bottle.
bet you can tell.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk about seafood consumption?
Yeah, when I think about microplastics that are heavily concentrated, this page was saying in marine environments, and they're accumulating in the bodies of fish and shellfish. If you do consume seafood, try to limit the varieties to have lower contamination or consider other protein sources. I don't eat fish or shellfish. I haven't for a few years now. Salmon was the last one to go. That was maybe 2 years ago. And again, well, no. I tried it again about a year and a half ago when I was coming out of my vegan life. So a year and a half. And I remember, so before that I hadn't eaten it because I was vegan. So, um, I don't miss it. I learned way too much about it. I actually, even though I know I'm committing a cardinal sin, but I don't worry about taking fish oil. I know that I probably could and should, but I feel like if the fish is contaminated with all this stuff, then their oil is too, and I don't want to get it in even more concentrated form. Um, I just, I look at it as, again, good, better, best until somebody somewhere comes out with a completely uncontaminated fish oil, which I'm sure they'll charge $1,000 a pill for. Uh, I I just don't want to touch the stuff. I've
Yep.
also seen the degradation of shellfish, and I live in the Gulf, the
Oh, sure.
Gulf of America, I guess as it's called now. So I live in the Gulf, and they have um all, I've seen the fish and the shellfish and some of these things that are coming out of the Gulf, and honestly, like, it doesn't look good. It does not look healthy.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I don't want any of it near me.
Yeah. And that leads into our last tip of what you can do, and that is just advocate for change. We can't do this alone. So advocate for policies that limit plastic use in packaging and encourage manufacturers to explore safer biodegradable alternatives. The more awareness we raise, the more likely it is that changes will happen at a systemic level. And this is so important because I think it all starts with awareness, and this is so huge. We have to get more information out because, as we had mentioned earlier, we really don't know the long-term effects, and there are no drugs developed to counteract the effects of whatever diseases these plastics can eventually cause. So we literally have no history in treating anything like this.
That's right. And again, we have to think about doing what you can with what you have. You're
Yeah.
not gonna be able to control everything. We just have to control what, what touches you and your family directly. There are a lot, and I know our new administration in the White House in 2025 this year, they're working towards making America healthier. And one of the ways that they're doing that is addressing some of these other pollution,
Mm-hmm.
these intentional pollutants that they're putting in the system, and in our skies. These intentional pollutants literally rain down on us. They are, some people believe, deposited in the skies intentionally from
Oh,
planes
wow.
carrying these microplastic
Oh,
poisons
wow.
that they put. You'll see if you see lines in the white lines in the blue sky, that
Mm-hmm.
that is and there's no plane in sight, right? That there's no,
Oh.
it's not the trails of a plane, the vapors of a plane trail. Those are chemicals that there's a lot of confirmation now that they're not, in addition to it being in the water and in the food supply, it is in the air supply
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. It's all scary.
Mhm.
So, as we move forward on this journey to food recovery, understanding how the food system impacts our health, it's crucial.
Mhm.
And microplastics and nanoplastics might be small, but their potential health impacts are very, very big. So, being aware of where these plastics come from and how they affect our bodies, it's the first step in protecting ourselves. So, if you're recovering from ultra processed food addiction, remember that your body is resilient, it can heal, and by making informed choices, you can support your health in ways that are both nourishing and protective.
Yes. So thanks for joining us. I hope this has been, our goal was to make it eye-opening,
Yeah.
and a little bit alarming, because it's extremely alarming, but also to give you, some practical tips. So let's jump into some viewer questions here. Paige, if you want to
Okay.
take that first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Are all plastics created equally and equally harmful? This was a big, big question, and I'm glad this was asked because we didn't really talk much about black plastics, but they have raised health concerns due to their potential to contain and leach harmful chemicals. Here's why they are considered particularly problematic. Black plastics are often produced from recycled electronic waste, which may contain hazardous substances. This recycling process can introduce toxic chemicals into consumer products. Studies have detected toxic flame retardants in black
Mhm.
plastic kitchen utensils and food contact items. These chemicals can migrate into our food during
Yeah.
cooking or serving, posing health risks. Think of, the rotisserie chicken or the takeout
Yeah, all the takeout
dinner.
containers are all black. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, plasticware.
And
So,
all of the, yeah, forks and knives. We're talking literally plasticware, which
yeah,
when people says that, plastic forks, knives, spoons, everything you get at a restaurant that someone gives you as a
yes,
takeout or a picnic, or it's all
shrink
plastic.
wrapped in plastic.
Exactly.
So limit the use of black plastic utensils. Opt for utensils made from safer materials like stainless steel, wood, or silicone, and avoid heating food in black plastic containers. That really increases the leaching of the harmful chemicals. And just stay informed, keep abreast of research and guidelines regarding safe kitchen practices and materials.
Yeah. Again, avoid heating food in any plastic containers, but especially black.
Yes, yes.
One thing that we did here, my husband and I, we were traveling a lot on the road for a while, and I invested in, there's these little, zippy little pouches that you can get on Amazon, and they are, metal forks, knives, spoons, that are
Oh,
washable. They're campware, if you will. Forks, knives,
mhm.
spoons, a straw that is porcelain. What else does it come with? Like a bottle opener, it's metal, like everything's metal or porcelain. And it comes in like a padded little zippy pouch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
we throw them in the car whenever we go, and we never have to use plasticware. And then I bought, a microwave pouch, they call it, which is essentially a pouch you plug into your outlet in your car, and it warms up your food. And in that little pouch or bag sits all of our glass containers, so that we, if there's hot food in those glass
Oh,
containers, it warms as we drive, and then we eat it with our reusable metal silverware. You could also just take silverware from your house, or buy a cheap set of silverware
yeah.
in your car. They sell sets of silverware that are dirt cheap, right? That are
Yeah.
metal.
At the dollar store. I've done that before when we're
Right.
going on vacation, and I will get, like, for $1, you get 2 forks, and great.
Exactly.
I take that with us. So if we lose it, I'm like, I don't care, but I don't want to take my
Exactly.
good stuff.
Yeah. Thrift store too, anything. So again, if you think about recommendations, right, to look at, we've talked a little bit about that. Well, what does that mean for, airborne microplastics? So again, these are potentially intentionally put in our air. They are also unintentionally put in our air. But of course, they're everywhere in cities and populated areas. They come out of the car. They're in the gasoline and,
Yeah.
and all the fumes from cars. Agricultural areas, they're right there, right? They're in the air of the fertilizer, of the pesticides. They're everywhere. And again, they can be settled onto our food. They can be directly ingested through breathing. Again, Paige was telling me as she was prepping this episode, driving down the road, inhaling we think, oh, the exhaust is harmful. We're inhaling the microplastic from the tires that are on the road of the cars around us. Like, think about
Mm.
that. Your tires, excuse me, are rubber. The rubber gets hot when it's the friction from the road. What does heat do? It releases microplastics.
Yeah. Yeah. All good points. Uh, this point was, somebody asked us about this, is how much information do we have on the issue of plastics? I've kind of talked about that already, but unfortunately the research is still in its very early stages. Anybody that you hear discussing this, they will all say it's in its infancy as far as research. And so there is a lot to learn. So we're just beginning to uncover this monumental problem. So just stay tuned and just control what you can.
Yep. And the last question, I know you're saying that plastics are found everywhere in the body, but is the brain the most critical place the plastics are settling? No, I mean, sure, it definitely would affect it, but I mean, think about it. It's every system of the body. And we can look at chronic inflammation linking to various health conditions. Microplastics and nanoplastics can potentially trigger neuroinflammation, right? Neuroinflammation is linked to lots of other issues downstream. And again, if we think about neuroinflammation, that means that something has crossed that blood-brain barrier. Not only are we inhaling it in, nostrils and getting into our mouth, gets in our gums, which are directly connected to the blood supply of the brain, but from the gut, right? Gut to brain, they are so small, they can cross the blood-brain barrier,
Yeah.
meaning, we have a barrier that protects our food from getting to the brain, right? And infecting the brain, but it didn't talk about the toxic ingredients in those foods and the toxic plastics in the air. So it's very, very sad, but it really can lead to all kinds of connection to downstream autoimmune conditions like MS, Parkinson's, and even Alzheimer's. So again, we want to be mindful, no pun intended, about what we're talking about here, and also thinking about, hey, as we age, we slow down. So they say, mentally, cognitively. But I'm really, the more educated I am around this, I really believe it has nothing to do with aging. It is a buildup of the toxic overload in our bodies, and our body cannot clean itself anymore. It cannot defend itself anymore. And the decline happens not from aging, but from toxic overload.
Yeah, and that's what they say too, that there really is, they don't know that the body is able to excrete this, and so
Oh, no,
that's how it ends
no.
up staying in our organs and our brain and all that. So
Yes.
great episode. I really appreciate. Do we have time for one more? No, should we stop there?
It's up to you.
Okay, let's do this. I'll just do this real fast. Somebody did ask, how is it possible? I'm sure that's a normal question. How is it possible that these plastics are crossing the blood-brain barrier? That, as Jamie mentioned, these are small, smaller than 100 nanometers. They're small enough that's how they're able to seep in. They're almost invisible, which makes it even more problematic. So while the exact mechanism isn't fully understood, researchers believe that their tiny size allows them to pass through membranes more easily, which just makes common sense. So once they're in the bloodstream, they may exploit weaknesses in the blood-brain barrier to enter brain tissue. And then we've got the inflammation problem, which is caused by the microplastics in the body. And then that can weaken or increase the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, which makes it easier for these harmful particles to enter. This could be particularly concerning for people with the pre-existing conditions that already are compromised. And like Jamie had mentioned, the multiple sclerosis or traumatic brain injury. And some research suggests that microplastics coated with lipids or fats might mimic natural substances that are allowed to cross the blood-brain barrier, and that tricks the brain into letting them pass. So the nanoplastics can also bind to proteins in the blood, forming a corona that allows them to slip through as well undetected. So if hopefully that cleared it up a little bit. They're small, they're pesky little buggers.
Yeah. So not the most uplifting episode we recorded, but we think it's important to bring this topic to you because again, if you think about ways that you're ingesting these foods, these processed foods, they are literally laden in and with plastics, and they're manufactured in plants that use plastic equipment. And it's just, if you can cut down the microplastic, right? There are some things we can't cut down. We cannot cut out, right? It's in the air that we breathe. It's in the water supply, even as careful as we are, it's in the water supply. There are things, even like we talked about, even farm fresh food is carried to us in plastic, where there are some things we cannot avoid. But where you can, you need to.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying this is not an uplifting episode, but not everything that we talk about,
That's right.
we're real. We need to keep it real because we care. And so we're just trying to provide the best information possible. So good, great point. Great point. Okay. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and we'll be back again. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.